Good day, everyone. I'm going to discuss for this session IFRS 3 business combinations. So you can see on the screen certain aspects of the standard. Our accounting standard is IFRS 3, that is International Financial Reporting Standards number 3, entitled, of course, Business Combinations. There are three areas in which we are going to look into. Number one is measuring assets, liabilities, and non-controlling interest. That's one. Then recognizing goodwill, and the last one would be disclosures. As to the first one, that would be computational as well as number two, but disclosures would be additional information in the notes to financial statements. Now, before we look into that specifically, like the discussions, take a look at this particular picture with a piece of puzzles making together. So what could be the reason why businesses would combine? That could be one question that we can ask ourselves with. So in this particular case, they are thinking of benefits. So just to summarize overall as to why businesses would combine, that would really be on the benefits that will be obtained should they do so. So example, if business A would combine with business B and or the businesses there available, so it's like two or more businesses combining, take note of the word businesses. And so the reason would be because of the synergistic benefits. We call that synergy. So synergy is a concept in management that means the sum of the parts or the sum of the individual parts would be its mathematical sum plus one. So example, if the equation is 1 plus 1 equals 2, that's mathematics. But if we think of synergy or business combination, it should be the mathematical sum or arithmetic sum plus 1. So meaning the combination of the businesses would add more benefits to the company as a whole. So that is the reason why entrepreneurs are thinking to do such or why they are doing that. All right. So this is a beautiful piece anyway. All right. So for my actual discussions, I will be lifting, or rather we would be lifting from the book of Guerrero. So this would be our source for discussions. Chapter 14, Business Combinations, IFRS 3. All right. So you have here the definition of a business combination. This can happen when the organizations would be, or separate enterprises would be becoming into one, brought together into one economic entity as a result of one enterprise obtaining control over the net assets and operations of another enterprise. So basically, there is a business combination because of the growing aspect of the company. So one company wants to grow, and that is through external. Because if it is internal, then that is to be done by like constructing more businesses and then adding more businesses in the conglomerate. But that is not the case here. So the case here is actually on the company acquiring another company because of this. So once again, it means that a business will just combine with another one because of synergistic benefits, as I've said, and one has control over the other. Control is achieved normally by acquiring more than half percent or 50 plus 1%, or basically at least 51% over the net assets. So take note, net assets, which mean or means equity or capital or net worth. So these are the synonymous terms to net assets. And operations. So operations, we think of input, process, and output. So in business or in a business flow, there would be inputs to be made so that, or inputs that should be there so that the outputs to be derived at will be available. So to be able to have the outputs, processes are made. If we think of a business, we think again of the IPO flow, input, process, and output. All right, so this constitute the operations of the business or another enterprise or business. Although we can also say that operations would mean selling, would mean production and administration of the business. So for those who are into business, they know these three things: selling or distribution, then production, of course, before or prior to selling, and administration. But then these are the three traditional areas of business. As you go into other subjects like management advisory services, you will know that there's more on the three traditional areas. All right. So you also have here coming from IFRS 3. For IFRS 3, a business combination is a transactional event in which an acquirer obtains control of one or more businesses. Acquirer means an entity or business that acquires another. The acquired entity is called acquiree. So as we all know in law or legal terms, the word that ends with ER means the doer of the action, while the word that ends with EE is the recipient of the action. So acquirer acquires the acquiree, wherein the latter is the one acquired by the acquirer. I hope that makes sense. So there's again control. And then a business would be integrated set of activities and assets that is capable of being conducted and managed for the purpose of providing a return directly to investors or other owners, members, or participants. So why would people be putting or placing money in a business? Because they think that they would be getting returns. So if this is a corporation, then they would get dividends or cooperative. But normally a business combination would be for corporations since we talk of stocks or shares. But we are not saying that other corporations or other forms of entities would not be allowed. All right. So an acquirer normally is the one that transfers a consideration, could be cash or non-cash or any other asset or assets, to be able to acquire another entity. So why would business combinations be there? So this has happened to a lot of cases. Could be for both positive or negative. That's the point of these two paragraphs. So some would think that they would expand better if they acquire a business. So that's why that's a case of external expansion rather than through internal one or ones. And then some entity would think that to be able to achieve much growth, then it is better to acquire again another business. Perhaps it's going to be costly and more risky, or there would be more risks if they make their own business. So there is an advantage of acquiring another one which is already existing. At least they can just improve the processes. All right. But then in, of course, doing so, there would be some limitations and risks, most especially if the companies are having incompatible sets of objectives. So that's one thing that should be taken into consideration. So a lot of things will be ironed out in the process. All right. So as what I've said, control can be best achieved by acquiring the net assets of another entity that is more than 50% or 50 plus 1%. You call this the majority number of shares, and you call this one a controlling interest over another corporation or entity. Also, it's said here assets because we can also acquire control by acquiring the entire business, especially now in our comparison of two types of acquisition of control. So we can have acquisition of assets or acquisition of stocks. So in acquisition of assets, assets are acquired and liabilities are assumed. Meaning to say, certain liabilities are to be presented in the financial statements later on because they are assumed by the entity or they have been considered as part of the combination. And we all know that net assets mean assets minus liabilities. And clearly, acquisition of assets, so we are acquiring the assets of the entity or acquiring the net assets in that case. Now, there are two types of acquisition of assets or net assets. You have statutory consolidation or statutory merger. Let's begin with statutory merger. If we say merger, statutory merger, that basically means that one company acquires another one, in which the latter would be dissolved and liquidated. So meaning only one company would survive. And normally this company is the acquirer. That is statutory merger. So there is an equation to this. The equation is A plus B equals either A or B. So depending on the case or situation or contract as to which one would be the one to survive. All right. So another one here is statutory consolidation. In statutory consolidation, this is the case in which when two of the entities would combine, then another entity would be occurring. So the equation in statutory consolidation would be A plus B equals another entity form. It could be C, D, or E, but not A. So in this case, two or more existing legal entities would be forming into one. And then the previous companies are dissolved and are then replaced by the new continuing company. So in that case, the two would not survive anymore and a new one would be emerging, as said. So that is acquisition of assets or net assets. On the other hand, another one is stock acquisition, wherein, in this case, one company acquires stocks of another, and the acquired number of percentage or the percentage of holdings or shareholdings would be more than 50% or the majority or 50 plus 1%. The acquiring parent is called the parent, of course, or the acquirer in acquisition of assets or net assets. And then the acquired company is the subsidiary, which is called the acquiree. Now, the difference of acquisition of assets and the stock acquisition or acquisition of stocks is that both the parent and the subsidiary would still exist. So this means that these two companies will be around, of course, and then just for the purpose of preparing financial statements that we will do the consolidation, wherein at the end of every accounting period, the financial statements of parent and subsidiary would be combined or consolidated into one set of financial statements. We have to note though that the consolidated or combined financial statements are just for the sake of external financial reporting purposes. And so both the parent and subsidiary or subsidiaries would still maintain their own financial records and statements because they are still existing, as opposed to acquisition of assets, either merger or consolidation, wherein the dissolved companies, of course, will no longer prepare their own financial statements clearly and obviously because they're already dissolved. All right. So method of business combination would be the so-called purchase method. So purchase method will mean that when we acquire assets as well as liabilities are assumed, then we have to record them at fair value. So basically, this is the concept when we purchase or acquire assets again, which is one thing that we have known as early as our first accounting. However, another method, which is pooling of interest method, is not allowed, wherein the assets and liabilities are simply recorded at their book value. So that's eliminated. However, we also have to take note that the fair values being said here would be the assets and liabilities of the acquired company, which means that the acquirer or the acquiring company, that's another term for the acquirer or the parent, would still remain presenting the assets and liabilities at book values. Okay, I hope that is clear. And IFRS 3 has already eliminated the pooling of interest method, even at 2008. Okay, so in 2004, it is termed purchase method. But in IFRS 3, it is now called as acquisition method, which is somehow connected or related because purchase is synonymous to acquisition. But just in case this will be asked in theories, of course, our answer would be acquisition method. Now, how do we know that a transaction or event is a business combination? There are 4 steps to consider. So first one is we identify the acquirer, which is here, determine the acquisition date, determine the consideration given, price paid by the acquirer, and then we have to recognize and measure the identifiable assets acquired. Take note, identifiable assets. So how do we identify if assets are identifiable? This would mean that they can be acquired, sold, leased, or transferred separately from a business. So these are identifiable assets. And that's why goodwill is not part of identifiable assets because goodwill can only be obtained by acquiring a business. So it is not separable from a business. Then also liabilities assumed and any non-controlling interest in the acquiree. Okay, so by then you will be able to know how much would be the goodwill or gain from a bargain purchase option. All right, so we will be tackling them one by one. However, let us mention them anyway. But it will be mentioned here as we go along the way. All right, so let's just mention though that if we say non-controlling interest or NCI, which is known minority interest before, this is the interest of the acquiree or the acquired company that is not acquired, or meaning the percentage that is not acquired in the acquiree. So example, if a certain business, company A or corporation A, acquired company B or corporation B 75% interest, then the 25% interest is the non-controlling interest or NCI, while the 75% of course is the CI or controlling interest. All right. Now, for goodwill, that will also be discussed in the computation. A note for gain from a bargain purchase. Identify the acquirer. As what I've said, normally the acquirer is the entity that transfers consideration, either cash or any other asset or assets, non-cash assets, and also the entity that would assume the liabilities of the acquired company. So this simply means that not all liabilities of the acquiree would be part of the new business or the combined business as a whole if the acquirer will not consent or will not agree with the assumption of liabilities. So this is like the case of partnership wherein agreement is also there because this is contract anyway. And then if this is stock acquisition, so this is the case in which the company, the acquirer, would be transferring or giving consideration of, again, cash or any other asset, non-cash asset, to get the stocks or shares of the acquiree. Acquiree, again, is the company being acquired. And then there's a slight mention of reverse acquisition, which will be tackled in subsequent chapters, in that what would happen is the acquirer or the transferor of consideration or the entity that acquires or transfers consideration to acquire another company will be the accounting acquiree. So meaning there is a reversal. The acquirer, legally speaking, becomes the acquiree, accounting speaking. Because in accounting, we talk of substance over form or legal substance over economic form. That's the first one. Second one is determine the acquisition date. Clearly, IFRS 3 stated that this is the date in which the acquirer obtains control of the acquiree. And when is that? If the acquirer legally transfers the consideration, acquires the assets, and assumes the liabilities of the acquiree at the closing date. So when the business that is acquired, meaning the acquiree, has been done with all its legalities and the closing, dissolution, and all. So this would be the time that control is achieved and is obtained by the acquirer. So that is the acquisition date. So it is also possible that the acquirer can have the acquisition, but control is achieved on a date that is earlier or later than the closing date. So example of that, when there is a contract or a written agreement that control is achieved before the closing date. I repeat, the closing date is when there is legal transfer of consideration. So this is very critical if we say acquisition date, since this would be the time that we have to establish fair values. And as what I've said, fair values of the assets, which are identifiable acquired or as acquired, and the liabilities assumed. All right. So that's the first one. Second one is first and second, and then we have the third one, determine the consideration given. So consideration given would be the price paid. For that, it will be at also the amount, so the consideration at its fair value also. So it's a matter of fair value of the consideration given and the fair value of the identifiable net assets. So how do we know the fair value of identifiable net assets? That would be simple. That is simply the net amount. In fact, it is said here the sum, but it is really the net amount of assets transferred. And then, so I think what is being said here is the fair value of the consideration of the acquirer. But what I was saying was the fair value of identifiable assets of the acquiree, okay, which is to be discussed later. So at this point in time, this is the total consideration given by the acquirer. So that would be the assets, the sum of assets, liabilities, and equity interest. So the consideration, again, could be cash and non-cash or any other assets, including contingent consideration. So this would mean like additional amounts will be received or will be paid, but normally paid will be transferred by the acquirer. So that would mean both an amount that will be added to the consideration. Okay, so in some situation though, in computation, so the contingent consideration will be placed as part of the consideration normally. But we will see the impact of that later on our computations of goodwill. And then also equity instruments, rather like you have ordinary or preference, options, warrants, and member interests of mutual entities. So example, if you have placed money in a mutual fund and the fund simply termed as mutual because there are basically corporations or entities in which you have placed your money. The mutual fund entity is the entity that manages your particular investments in that company. So if you have the mutual fund member interests of mutual entities, you may also use that as part of the consideration. Contingent consideration, as said, depends its value on certain happening or occurrence of specified events. So it could be a targeted sale or income performance of the acquiring company. So example, the acquirer would be stating that should the acquiree obtain this particular sales or income performances of 2 or more years average wise, then the acquirer would be paying additional consideration. All right. So, of course, the acquiree would be receiving on its end. Okay. So you have here another one would be acquisition related costs. Well, prior to that would be the changes. So what do we do to account for the changes prior to acquisition related costs? Anyway, it is possible that there would be changes along the way about certain amounts which we estimated at the date of acquisition. So some amounts that are estimated and then the affirmation or reaffirmation as to its value will be happening later on. So with that, there would be 1 year measurement period in which there would be adjustments and that would affect and have impact on the computation of goodwill. So in other words, there should be some allowances as to certain changes of values that could happen within 1 year. But then if the changes would happen after the acquisition date, so for example, there was meeting of the earnings target, but it's already beyond. So in that case, the accounting would depend as to whether there is an additional consideration that is equity instrument or cash or other assets paid. Now, going back to changes within the measurement period, this is still on contingent consideration, by the way. So if it is within, the changes would be part of the computation of goodwill. So the impact is on the goodwill, the amount or its value. But then if it happens after the acquisition date, so let's know first if the consideration that is contingent and additional is an equity instrument or not. If it is an equity instrument or not, then the original amount is not remeasured. Okay, so meaning we have to retain it as it is. But if the additional consideration is cash or other assets, then the changed amount will be part or recognized in profit or loss. So no more on impact on the goodwill computation or value. Okay, so in other words, it would be a gain or loss on changes or measurement of the value. So it's a gain if ever the liability decreases And if the liability increases, so there would be a loss. So that's it for contingent consideration, which is the part of the third step, still part of it. Then after that is acquisition related costs. There would be costs needed in order to make or have or take into effect a business combination. So we need to pay to certain experts. Could be brokers, the accounting, legal, and other professionals. We need to pay fees to them. Also, there would be some general administrative costs to be spent to. So in other words, all other costs needed in order to take into effect a business combination, including also, for example, we have acquire the services of professionals to analyze as to whether the merger or the consolidation or business combination or whatnot would be applicable or would be beneficial to the company as a whole. So in that case, there would be some outsiders, or let's say we maintain an internal department for that. So we need also to consider. But the cost of maintaining an internal acquisition department would not be included in the price. Okay, so they are expensed. Okay, so in other words, guys, this is the update. Whether the acquisition related costs would be directly related to the business combination, so meaning it is a direct acquisition related costs, meaning the business combination would not happen or occur without spending for those costs. Then indirect acquisition related costs, even not directly related to indirect, they would be expensed, like all of them, whether direct or indirect. Well, prior to IFRS 3 business combinations, like the revised one, prior to that, the ruling is that for direct, it will be capitalized. Indirect would be expense. But now, in the revised version so far, it's really going to be that all acquisition related costs should be expensed immediately. I hope that is clear. Next, for stock issuance costs, the ruling is that if the costs are direct, but they are related to the issuance of the shares for the net assets acquired. So meaning the acquirer issued shares to be able to acquire that particular entity. So in that case, the shareholders of the acquired entity, if the acquired entity is dissolved, will become shareholders of the acquirer. So basically, it's a change of ownership as we speak of. So certain costs will be there or will be spent of. So you have SEC registration fees, documentary stamp tax, and newspaper publication fees. So all these stock or share issuance costs should be deducted from share premium, formerly known as APIC or additional paid-in capital, from previous share issuance. So it's possible that there would still be balance of the APIC or share premium. If the corporation is really big, for sure, there's going to be balance of that out of previous share issuances. So meaning if shares are issued prior to the date of acquisition or the control date has been achieved, and then there's a premium or an amount on top of that, then that amount will be used to absorb the value of stock issuance costs. However, if the APIC or share premium is already zero, so in other words, we are going to use expense or charge that to expense. Remember, expenses will be close to income and expense summary than to retained earnings. So that's why if the books of the company is already closed, then we are going to use or make use of the retained earnings. However, I guess expenses and retained earnings would be not much of a concern but we just have to take note that expenses are to be close to retained earnings later on. Since questions could be asked like how much would be the balance of retained earnings. So if you use expenses in journalizing, then you might be wrong if you failed to think that expenses are to be close to retained earnings. Formerly, that's a term, but now the term is accumulated profits and losses. All right, that's it for stock issuance cost. Next one would be to record and measure the acquirer's assets and liabilities that are assumed. As what I've said, the assets should be identifiable. So this would exclude goodwill since goodwill cannot be acquired or sold separate of a business. There should be a business that is to be acquired and sold to have it or transfer it. And liabilities should be assumed, should be agreed upon by the two parties, both the acquirer and acquiree, that the acquirer will assume. As said, the identifiable assets should never include goodwill. Okay, so that's why pre-existing goodwill is excluded in order to pave the way for the new goodwill. Then question, when would there be goodwill or gain on acquisition? All right, so this could be a question. Well, the formula, hopefully you're going to take that down, is simply the acquisition cost or consideration given or transferred less fair value of identifiable net assets of the subsidiary or acquiree. So let's look that into values. Okay, so you have here, you have the cost, total cost here, price paid, less the fair value of identifiable net assets of the acquiree. So the difference is either goodwill or gain on acquisition. If it is positive, the answer or the result would be goodwill. If it is negative, it is a gain on acquisition. Just take note that the standard removes already the term negative goodwill. So no more negative goodwill. It will be treated as a gain on acquisition. All right. To continue, if the price paid exceeds the fair value of identifiable net assets of subsidiary, the result is goodwill. The goodwill is there because the company pays, the company here is the acquirer, pays more than the company's value. Why is that? Probably the acquirer thinks that there would be more benefits that will be obtained by acquiring that company as a whole or to the company as a whole. So that is why it is willing to pay the premium. These benefits may happen in the future. But once again, as what I've said, the acquirer thinks or believes into that. Then take note that goodwill, by the way, is not amortized, but it is tested for impairment. Under IAS 36, impairment of assets, we are going to impair, number one, non-current assets. Number two, they are not using fair value method in recognition and subsequent measurement or recognition. So basically, we will impair assets that are non-current long-term assets without using fair value method for subsequent recognition. All right. Since goodwill is a non-current asset that is an intangible asset or one of the intangible assets which are part, of course, of the non-current or long-term assets and which is not reflected at fair value, therefore it is to be tested for impairment. However, it is not amortized because to amortize an intangible asset would depend upon its useful life. The goodwill has no specific useful life. It is indefinite. Therefore, it is not amortized. All right. On the other hand, If the opposite is true, meaning when the price is less than the fair value, which results to a negative amount, before there is the term negative goodwill, but then it is no longer allowed or considered. But why is that? This is the case wherein the acquirer gets the acquisition at a bargain. So meaning it was able to buy it at a lower amount. But why is it that it is still buying that particular entity and then it results to a negative amount? It is because still the company acquirer believes that by acquiring the acquiree, there would still be additional benefits that would be obtained along the way. But then it just got the gain since probably because of reasons that the subsidiary had some difficulties, financial difficulties, to the point of bankruptcy. Another term is insolvency, that it would acquire it or that. So that's the point of the second one. All right, so hopefully that is clear. Then no more negative goodwill. On the other hand, if you say valuation of identifiable assets and liabilities, so they have to be reflected at their fair values. As also said that the values there at the control date or date of acquisition might be temporary since some values are contingent. For example, that they would depend or it would depend to certain happening of specified events, so the values could change later on. There's given 1 year period, measurement period to do that, or remeasurement. Okay, so in that case, any change is adjusted retroactively. So this would have impact on the amount of the goodwill or gain on acquisition. And prior period financial statements are to be revised to reflect the final values and any related amortization. So that would be the impact in case there will be changes in the measurement period. All right. Then what about, for example, if there would be negative goodwill before, but now it is a gain on acquisition. So we have to use gain on acquisition as account title. What do we do? The standard also says that should there be a negative amount or a gain on acquisition, all values should be reviewed. And in fact, there's also 1 year measurement period because it is possible that there were just some errors or misstatements or lapse of judgments as to the amounts of all assets and liabilities that resulted to gain on acquisition. Therefore, all items again should be reviewed or should be remeasured if appropriate on the situation. Again, the purpose of acquiring a business combination would be synergistic benefit. So the standard things that it would have been resulting to goodwill. Okay, so that's the point though. Then what about if there would be contra accounts or valuation allowances? The standard says that no valuation allowances would be included. So one example of that would be accumulated depreciation of property, plant, and equipment, and the allowance for doubtful accounts for accounts receivable. So in that situation, no valuation allowances would be considered. All right. On the other hand, for some assets, no separate contra account again, and like the net amount is shown. So this wouldn't be a problem. Just like acquired receivables, including loans. No separate valuation allowance or allowance. So that's why this wouldn't be a problem. On the other hand, some assets and liabilities may be recognized because of the acquisition. So one of that again is contingent consideration, as what I've said, and more. Okay, so this can be visited further on, but there are some really assets that we have to take note that would be recognized. One of that is the research and development. Remember, if, for example, this is really at early stage of prototyping, we are still at research, or if it is at development, but it's not clear as to whether the cost belongs to research and development, we assume it is research. That's under IAS 38. But then at early stage, we cannot like identify. So if this is IAS 38, this means that all costs should be expensed immediately. However, if this is IFRS 3 business combination in which we acquired a certain company or acquired that there is an existing R&D project ongoing, even at research stage, we have to recognize that as an intangible asset with research and development as an account item. So see, some assets and recognized and liabilities may be recognized because of the business combination. And in fact, in my example, I think it is not just unrecognized, it is really movement of values from retained earnings if those amounts have already been closed by the company, or if not, at expenses moved to assets. So that's how critical it is to think about that. All right. Then another one is, how about we apply now through examples the concepts that we have said so far. Okay, so let's continue. So here are our examples. First is acquisition of net assets. In acquisition of net assets, again, the acquired company or the acquirer will be dissolved, and then the acquirer company would remain. Acquirer Incorporated is the acquirer, of course, and J&J is the acquiree. So here are the amounts on statement of financial position, assets, liabilities, and equity. Then we have to compute the goodwill or gain on acquisition and record the entries. So these are the requirements. First, we have to compute how much really is the consideration. So let's check. The consideration is to be given here on the different cases. We have case 1 and case 2. All right. While the fair values of the net identifiable assets are already here, unless there would be additional information. So in other words, fair values would be equal to book values if ever there would be no additional information given on the problem. But of course, in real life, there is a rebuttable presumption under IFRS 13 that we can determine the fair values of assets and liabilities. All right, so you have here cash, all items here, because they are identifiable assets, minus the liabilities. If there has been no mention as to whether the liabilities are assumed or not, we assume that they are assumed. All right, so identifiable assets and liabilities assumed minus would be the fair value of net identifiable assets. All right, then this would be the amount deducted from the consideration. All acquisition-related costs should be expensed immediately, as said. Then if there are any share issuance costs, should be deducted first to share premium, and any excess to expense, or if we want to be safe, to accumulated profits and losses, formerly known as retained earnings. Okay, so here we have, there are certain acquisition related costs here. So 50,000 professional fees that is to be expensed, and stock issuance costs should be charged to our share premium if there is balance from original issuance. Consideration is 80,000 shares multiplied by the fair value or market value of that. So fair value of the consideration given, and then minus the fair value of the net identifiable assets acquired. So you have here 80,000 times 40 pesos market value less the fair value of net identifiable assets, so that the goodwill will become 580,000. So how do we record? In the books of the acquirer incorporated, to recognize that, simply debit all the assets, identifiable assets coming from the acquiree or the acquired company, credit all liabilities applicable, credit the consideration. Take note that the consideration here would be shares or where shares. So at par value, that would be the credit to ordinary shares or common stock, and additional credit to share premium or APIC for the excess of par value. Which means that if the consideration is cash, so it is possible that it will be either on the debit or credit side, depending on the case. If the consideration given is really that big for cash, so in that case, cash will be placed on the credit side. All right. So that's the point there. And then what about to record acquisition related costs? So here you have here, as said, we are going to debit the acquisition expense at 50,000 pesos. And then we are going to debit also to share premium or APIC. This one is for the acquisition cost professional fees, and this one is for the share issuance cost or expenses and credit cash. All right, so meaning record the acquisition of the assets separately or net assets separately from the costs. What's the point? Because you might be tempted to merge them. Although if overall we may compound them, but that's going to be tricky and dangerous to double check. All right. What about case 2? Let's check if there are changes of values. Okay, so same value for professional fees, that's 50,000, but stock issuance costs are changed, 130,000. And then 20,000 shares with 120 pesos each market value, we multiply minus with the same fair value of net identifiable assets, so that the resulting figure would be the gain on acquisition. The gain on acquisition is 220,000, and that will be part of the income, total income of the company, part of the income statement, profit or loss section of the statement of comprehensive income. Okay, so you can see here gain on acquisition. And remember, gain is part of income which will be closed at the closing time at the end of the accounting period to retained earnings or accumulated profits and losses. All right. What about for acquisition related costs? Here it is. For our acquisition expense, we have 50,000, same. Our APIC is only at 100,000 in this case. So that's why we have to apply it first to that for our 130,000 amount or value of our share issuance cost or stock issuance cost, and the excess should be expensed immediately. Stock issuance cost is part of operating expenses. All right, so that's it. If we have to classify this one, this would be part of other expenses. So you have 4 classifications of expenses. You have selling, you have administrative, you have other, and then you have finance costs. Some would say other, but this could be part of administration if you would like to. More on administration. All right. Hopefully that is clear. I've already mentioned these items. Okay. So what about if there would be contingent consideration here? So how do we record that? So for that, it will be part of the second part of this series. So recording contingent consideration changes. Then what about for the part of the acquiree? Then goodwill and the related items, impairment and disclosure. So these are the items for the second part of this session. All right. So hopefully you've learned something for today or this session. And I'll see you next time for the second part of this one. Bye for now.